So let's go over ground rules. I think people are familiar enough that we understand what some basic ground rules are. The first, that we treat everybody respectfully, that we listen carefully, that we wait till they're finished before we want to say our point. If there's really something that you want to say, most of you have a piece of paper, you can write down a comment, your questions. I'm not going to select people, you're going to write your questions on a piece of paper. Jane has there's Jane, and Jane has paper and pens. I'm going to look at the questions and make sure that everybody on the panel gets an opportunity to respond to that, and one person isn't singled out per se. If it says so-and-so was, they're singling one person, I'm going to make sure that that's equitable across the board. So I'll probably read the question or do that, but make sure everybody has a chance to do that. Please, before you're speaking, make sure that I acknowledge that, wave and whatever. I'll make sure that we get to you. That is my job up here, and I will be paying attention to that. Try to do some active listening, really be paying attention to this. Make your statements concise and to the point. We really don't have a lot of time, and I'm sure people are here wanting to make the best use of their time. And just make sure, please, to be respectful of other people in the room. Please don't use profanity, cussing, gestures, that sort of thing, right? No personal attacks. Please don't come out with signs or candidate endorsements. Hi, come on in. And please make sure there's no applause. You know how sometimes we get excited and start applauding, so please try not to do that. So I'm just going to go through, and we'll start down with you and just say your name and what your ward.
My name is Heather Harp, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 3.
Just a second. This is not their introduction. I'm not saying your names. I'm going to have them say what? Oh, sure. Okay, please turn off your cell phones. I'm just going to have them say their names, and then we're going to do the introductions.
Okay. I'm John Van Dyke. I'm running for City Council in Ward 3 as well.
Tom Winter, the third Ward 3 candidate.
My name is Chris Badgley. I'm running for Ward 4.
My name is Jesse Ramos. I'm also running for Ward 4.
I'm Greg Strandberg, running for Ward 4 as well.
I'm John Wilkins, and I'm running for Ward 4 also.
Well, as you can count, we have 7 candidates tonight, and so we want to make sure that you each have an opportunity to speak and to represent what your views are. Before we go on with that, I'd like to recognize Jane Kelly. She's the neighborhood coordinator for Missoula's neighborhood councils, and she's organized. And no applause. We broke the ground rules already. Actually, I think we could applaud these guys because they certainly, I mean, not that you wouldn't they deserve that. Along with Karen Gaspoda. And Karen will be our timer. So if you see her, she's going to be reading signs. So this is you need to be watching her carefully. And if she starts waving 30, and she's going to go down to 10, and when she gets there and she has stopped, that's my job. So I'm just going to say thank you. Okay? So we're going to work really hard at that. So let me explain a little bit about the Community Dispute Resolution Center, which I'm representing. It's a not-for-profit group. It's dedicated to resolving conflicts, improving relationships, and strengthening our community. One of the ways we do that is we mediate in justice court. We mediate for parenting plans. For the parenting plans, we do that. Often they're assigned by standing masters. And so we go through those and try to get mom and dad on the same page with their kids. But we try to do this through that type of facilitated mediation and decision-making sharing. And then again, I'd really like to thank all of you here today as voters to come to show your interest and your dedication to the community and to come and to listen to what you folks have to say today. So as I said, Jane has, if you need a card or a pen, you can get up and go over to Jane and get that, if that will help. I'm going to screen the questions for duplication, and again, I'm going to screen them so they don't single out one person, so everybody has an opportunity to respond to that. We want to make sure, again, that that's very fair. I just want to explain a couple things about the election. I need my information for that. It's a nonpartisan election. It's going to be conducted by mail ballot. The ballots will be mailed to qualified voters 20 days prior to the election on October 18th. For this election only, all voter services will be located at the Missoula County Fairgrounds Building, number 15. The election office is in the middle of moving. So all ballots must be received by the Missoula County Elections Office or dropped off at one of the approved drop-off locations by November 7th at 8 p.m. on election day. So if there's anything else related to the city election, you can call 258-4751. So let's get this forum going. So again, to repeat the ground rules, please make sure you're listening, respectful of each other, and adhere to the time frames. No personal attacks, profanity, no heckling or applause till the end, okay? So what I thought we could do is start alphabetically backwards.
Yes.
I know you're gonna mix that up, isn't that funny? So what we'd like to do now is to allow you all the opportunity to have 2 minutes for opening statements. Got your timing going here. So just, if you take 2 minutes, whatever you want to say in your opening statements, then we'll get to the questions.
It's the first time I ever got to be first. But anyway, I live in this neighborhood. I've lived 38 years in the Lewis and Clark area, once on Livingston and then on Fairview. I also ran the neighborhood council for about 5 years, and then infill started hitting us. And the people in my council wanted me to run because I was against it for quite a lot, and still am today. I did manage to stop the lot line relocation. I had to go to Helena to do that with the help of Vicki Cocciarella. I've been on council now for 12 years. I started the rental safety program here, and students at the college, there's no cost to them, and it's $25 to everybody else, which is pretty cheap. I looked at the deer complex and kind of threw up my arms because nobody could agree, but we're kind of looking at it again. So see what we can do about it. I served on the Aging Services Board. I was on the Fair Advisory Board. I've been on numerous boards, I can't even think of them all. But I've worked diligently for Ward 4. If some of you that live up on Whitaker, if you remember the red dump truck coming down, that's the Jacob Bridge going, I actually went and talked to them, the gentleman that run that truck, and got that stopped. I've helped with water problems, mountain water that was going on some of our residents up on the hill. I also was involved in the heights, how you could build something.
You've got 10 seconds.
I'm watching. So I've done a lot of things, and numerous things I didn't even mention. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Great.
Okay, my name is Greg Strandberg, I'm running for Ward 4, and the big reason for that is I feel as though taxes are out of control in Missoula right now. They're up 95% over the past 12 years. We also have $250 million in long-term bonding debt. I don't know how we're going to get this paid off because the city can't seem to get its spending habit under control. A lot of the city councilors have admitted before they're not quite sure of the budget, exactly what's in there, and I don't blame them because it's 260 pages, and yet when you dig into the various agencies and departments, you find that there are so many miscellaneous expenses that you can't really take a fine-tooth comb to this and figure out where we can make some cuts so we can stop raising these taxes 3, 4, 5% every year. And I think if you're on a fixed income or if you're a homeowner, it's probably pretty frustrating. I don't own a home myself, I'm a renter, so it doesn't really affect me as much, but I think we really need to get this under control and we need to look at the spending the city's doing and just kind of return a little bit of sanity to city government, so that's why I'm running. Thanks.
My name is Jesse Ramos, and I'm running because I work in financial services and wealth management, and I have a lot of clients that are retired. I write for the Missoulians Montana 55 magazine, writing different articles on how they can better maximize their retirement. And a lot of my clients are coming to me, and they're literally getting taxed out of their home with the reckless spending that the city's doing. And I was actually urged to get into the race by my clients. And I'm also running because it's my job to study under economists, to go to seminars, to learn and grow my economic knowledge. And I just think that would be a very valuable asset for the mayor, whoever it is, to tap into, and for other members of the council to tap into. Because right now, budgeting is not the city council's strongest suit. And I do budgets for a living. I love doing budgets. I truly have a passion for it. I'm always reading economic journals and trying to do better. And I figured right now, I'm young, I'm single, I don't have kids, and I've been complaining about city issues, and instead of just continuing to complain, I thought it was probably time to step up and actually do something about it. Hopefully I'll be able to put some of my financial knowledge to work for the citizens of Missoula and those living on a fixed income, like Social Security or an annuity, because again, those don't have any increases. Social Security went up 0.03% last year, and taxes for many years have gone up 3 to 4%. So that's just not right, and it's very hard for citizens to compete with that. So again, that's why I'm running, and I ask for your vote just to bring some knowledge to the city council and put some of my financial knowledge to work.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Badgley, and I'm running for Ward 4. I grew up here in Missoula, went to Hellgate High. My family has been in Missoula for close to over 100 years. There's been a Badgley hanging their hat here. My parents founded the Institute of the Rockies, which is adult education and public policy. And so I believe in Missoula, it's a wonderful place to raise children. We have great people here. I have a commitment to public service, and I'm here today because I want to serve Missoula. I want to earn your vote. I care deeply about it. Thank you very much.
My name's Tom Winter for Ward 3. I own and operate a healthcare company centered downtown, and I love this city, and I always have. I'm not a native. I've been here for 10 or 11 years, my short life. And the reason I'm getting involved in this race in the first place was in my business and just in my life lately especially, watching the way that the state and local governments can facilitate different services and help people out, and also the ways that they sometimes hinder people, really opened my eyes to getting involved in civic and just in government in general and municipal government specifically. I just really believe firmly, it's a deep moral belief that local municipal elections and government can really change people's lives for the better. And in this introduction, I could go through policy details and things like that, but more just a general concept. I believe deeply in municipal government to make your lives better, and I'm really excited to answer your questions.
Okay. I'm John Van Dyke. I grew up here in Missoula. Went to Lewis and Clark for a couple of years, although I'm in Ward 3 now. A few of the priorities in my platform this year are safe roads for all users, whether you're in a vehicle or a bicycle or a horse or on foot. One of the things that's been on my mind a lot these last several months is communication between City Hall and City Council and people who live here and try to make a living, try to find affordable housing. I think the city does an adequate job, but it's time to aim higher and raise our standards. And that's a two-way street. That means more involvement and making sure that the voices of Missoulians are heard and that they're directed to the right places as well. It's kind of hard to navigate the city's website, let alone the vast schedule of committees that the city oversees. I went to the University of Montana twice, not because the first time wasn't good enough. I got a master's degree in public administration, which has really given me I think a strong perspective of what local government does and what it can do and what it should do. And I hope to put that to service for Missoula. Thank you.
My name's Heather Harp, and I'm, this is my first foray into the political world, I think for most of us, other than John at the end. And so let me give you a little background, because some of you are neighbors and I've known you or have competed against you on the court. But this is a very special moment in my life. After 22 years of being a financial advisor and digging into the weeds, if you will, of people's budgets and really trying to help them find the means to do what they want to do with their own lives and find purpose, if you will, I also got involved into community service. And I joined the Kiwanis Club of Missoula 15 years ago. And someone along the way decided to tap me on the shoulder and think that I had leadership potential. And so I became secretary, learned the ropes there, moved up into president. Upon fulfilling that particular need, the Poverello Center came knocking, and they asked me to serve on their board as well. And you might remember that was a pretty contentious relocation project. And I was on the board when that happened. I served as president as well. And now I'm the president of the board for Glacier Ice Rink. So they're all very different kinds of venues, if you will, for community service, but each one of them has really been to serve a greater good. And I believe that after all this time, that I've been nudged gently in this direction, that it was time, and that I have not only had the experience, but it's given me the opportunity to stand here in front of you feeling that I have what it takes to become a very good leader. And leaders require to be able to build consensus and be able to dive into the weeds of a budget, but also, most importantly, to pan out and look at the bigger picture, because it's really easy to get boiled down into all the little details. And we get kind of frustrated by it, but we have to remember that there's a much greater future ahead of us. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, thank you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into the questions that people have posed. And I'm not putting them in order, I was just checking them for duplication. What I'd like to say is what we'll do now is we'll start next, and we'll start the first question with you, Greg, if you're ready. And then we'll take turns, so each person gets their chance to go first. We'll go until about 7:40, because I want to make sure that each of our candidates has an opportunity to do closing statements. So we've got about an hour and roughly an hour and 20 minutes for questions. So be prepared, okay? So, you're ready? Yes, go ahead.
You asked the candidates all to project to the back of the room.
Yes. So thank you, Heather, because I noticed you stood out, and if people do want to stand up, that's fine, and I do appreciate that, because I know I have to really work on my voice.
Was it easier for you to hear when I stood up?
Yes,
Okay.
it's still difficult.
Okay.
Do you want to move up front? Would that help?
I would just sit in a big circle. That might help.
Project.
Okay, we all need to project, and so if it doesn't sound like that, make sure to raise your hand and do that, your thing. But I'll be watching for that too, okay? So, here's question number 1. And Greg's going to start this. What is your opinion about the conversation regarding Day of the Dead parade and events?
All right, yeah, I read about this story recently, and it talks about the Day of the Dead parade that they hold downtown, I guess, every year. They've been doing it for a long time. And the council talked about that a lot on Monday night. A lot of people came in and gave comments saying they were kind of feeling offended by it. This isn't treating indigenous people and their heritage correctly and such. And personally, I don't really care about that. I figure this parade's been going on a long time. I'm not worried about it. I don't feel it's hurting anybody. Maybe a few people, but I think a lot of people seem to enjoy it. Families enjoy going to it. I'm not too worried about it. I wish the city council would spend more time digging into the budget and figuring out what these $37 million of miscellaneous expenses that we have are, and other ways that they can really reduce the burden on taxpayers, instead of a lot of these symbolic gestures, talking about parades, talking about honoring people. I just think it's a waste of time a lot of times, and so we just need to return a little sanity to city government. Thanks.
Okay, and I should remind you, I don't know if I stated this clearly enough, you get 1 minute per question. Okay?
Good.
Okay, go ahead. Do you need me to repeat the question? Just ask.
So, regarding the Day of the Dead ceremony, I was actually at the city council meeting on Monday and was able to hear some really legitimate concerns from a lot of the folks out there. And on the other side, there's always two sides to every story. There are a lot of folks that go out there and they have fun and they enjoy themselves, and a lot of people aren't going out there being malicious, but like anything, you do have some bad apples. And I think that that's what needs to be addressed, are the bad apples that are going out there and they're antagonizing folks. I think that people should be able to celebrate in the way that they want. We live in a free society. If it's offending some people, I feel bad for that, but at the same time, folks are out there, they're having fun. As long as there's no violence caused, I don't really see an issue with that. And secondly, to follow up, I'd like to kind of echo Greg's point, is that the city has a lot more important issues to address right now. There's folks getting taxed out of their homes. There's $7.9 million being spent on a walking bridge. There's just all kinds of different issues
Very good,
that
thank you.
need to
This
be.
is one that stops something up in the back. Okay.
So the Day of Dead Parade, my daughter and I have enjoyed that on multiple occasions, and it is cathartic for a number of people to let go of loved ones that they lost in the last year. And so there is a healing nature to it. There's a community cohesion to it. And I would say that in any event, there's going to be offended people. We can't get everyone to agree on everything all the time. However, I feel that it's a big part of Missoula and that we should continue to allow it to happen. Thank you.
So for Day of the Dead, I would echo Chris. I'm sensitive to charges of cultural appropriation, and I understand that. But I think it's woven into the fabric of our community, and there's a way to handle it appropriately and to make sure that the organizers of the events understand what they're doing and understand the cultural underpinnings of the celebration and just make it feel inclusive for all. It's, I think it's a civic thing as much as it's a municipal thing. It's just a discourse issue. And just a respect question that really can be solved by respectfully meeting each other. So.
I had 30 seconds left on the clock. Can you repeat the question exactly? Just want to make sure I'm answering it.
What is your opinion about the conversation
Roger.
regarding Day of the Dead parade and events?
Yeah, I heard about this as well. I know the organizers. I've helped with some of the activities in the past for Festival of the Dead, and I know a lot of people find a lot of great meaning in it within the community. It creates community in our community, but on the other side of the coin, there's people who have a legitimate gripe about it, that it's a cultural appropriation. Organizers are aware of those concerns. They've held in past years seminars about what it means, what cultural appropriation means. So I know that they're receptive to it. I don't know if the protesters know that they know that. So I hope the communication stays open. And I don't think there's a problem with organizers just saying, let's just hold off on it this year until we can have a better dialogue with the community.
This has become a tradition for Missoula, but I think there are traditions that have gone on throughout our country that thank you, I'll speak up, that I think there are certain traditions that perhaps need to be revisited. And we've seen at the national level, whether it's certain monuments or certain statues that have come down because they are now seen as an offense to a wide swath of our population. And I think we have to be very sensitive to that. So if this is something that Missoula does want to in fact continue on, then I think it kind of going back to what Tom and John both said, that perhaps we need to revisit and maybe have an adaptation of that particular tradition more than anything else. Rather than do away with it or just keep it going as it always has been, I think an adaptation would be in order. Thank you.
So it's hard for me to jump up and down, so I hope you can hear my illustrious voice. I would rather see this stop, go away. It's not really meeting what it intentionally was founded for back in years ago. We have Memorial Day to express our stuff for our passed away people. And like I said at City Council, shame on you Missoulians that harass these people. We don't need that in our community. And just that aspect alone is enough that I think it should not happen anymore.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, we're gonna start with you, Jesse. Whoops, that was a question. There has been at least 3 resignations within city council in the past 10 years. How will you assure us that you will be committed for the full term?
Well, I think I can pretty easily sum that up in the fact that I have really enjoyed the campaign. I really enjoy the people that I meet on the campaign trail. I love working for Ward 4, getting out there, meeting the folks. I love learning about the budget. I truly have become a little bit obsessive about the city budget, digging into things all the time in my spare time, reading through resolutions, and I can tell you that I really do have a passion for it. Missoula is my home. My mom, I grew up in Libby, Montana. She lives up north, and I couldn't imagine moving away from her anytime soon. And this is an awesome spot. She loves to come down and visit. So I think that between my passion and the location and my love for the city, I think I can promise you that I will remain a full term.
Chris?
So I made a decision to move back to Missoula to raise my daughter here because it has a wonderful school system. I'm a product of the school system. My parents were products of the school system. This community cares about each other. And so I am here. I'm not going anywhere. So I would be honored to serve for the next 4 years and do well by Missoula. So we love each other here. We're a family in this bowl. And we need to take care of each other. We push each other out of the snow, no matter what your bumper sticker says in this town. And that's what brings us together. We may fight at times, but we are all here together. So I want to be part of that. Thank you.
It's a fairly easy one. I mean, I don't think any of us would be running if we didn't want to spend the next 4 years doing this. It's a certain type of person that wants this job, and I know I certainly do, and I bet everyone else does. Barring, what would it be? Nothing. I'm never leaving Missoula, regardless of winning or losing. So you're stuck with me either way.
Yeah, this is a personal commitment for me. I want to serve my community. That's why I haven't mentioned Missoula Community Radio yet. That's why I'm general manager there. Talking with the people of our community, the organizations who continue to make this community a better place. Being on city council helps me to do that job better. There's no reason I want to step away from that in 4 years. During a second term, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
I can't stand in front of you and say I promise I will be here, but I feel that I will be here. 22 years ago, I moved here from Wisconsin, and it's a pretty amazing place back there. But I tell you what, at least compared to Missoula, we don't have the humidity and the mosquitoes the size of small birds. So I have no intention of going back. So having been here for more than half of my life now, because I just turned 45 a couple of weeks ago, I feel that this is my home. And with my husband and 2 daughters, I can't imagine a better place. And I think everyone in this room has traveled someplace else, had a wonderful vacation or time, and when you come back into Missoula, you're like, I am home, right? And that's how I feel about this community. And because of that feeling, I am committed to serving on council for as long as you will have me. Thank you.
Well, what can I say? I've been here 12 years on council. I haven't left yet. So I figure 4 more years, as long as the good Lord don't call me away, I'll be here.
Yeah, I'm not on any plans to leave Missoula anytime soon. My wife is owner of a Montessori school, daycare school here in town, so we're kind of invested in that. I got several part-time jobs that I work while I kind of do stay-at-home dad stuff for my 6-year-old son who's in Lewis and Clark school. So we just actually moved from Franklin to the Ford neighborhood last year to Lewis and Clark neighborhood because we wanted to get into a better school, and we're real happy and things are going well. So I'm just hoping I can get elected and serve and help out the taxpayers here in Ward 4. Thanks.
Okay. So we'll start with Chris. This is a I can't say the 2 R's. Word 4. Jeez, I'm Mr. for me. But I would like the Ward 3, see now I can say 3 without 2 R's, to answer this question. What will you do to get 4, that's tension, in winter snow, for the winter snow and leaf pickup? They're always last. So can you respond to the issues of winter snow and leaf pickup? Chris first, please.
One more time on the question. How would,
It says, what will you do to get Ward 4 attention in winter snow and leaf pickup? We are always last.
well, I would voice my opinion in council chambers, is what I would do, and to find out the person at the head of the department who I would talk to and petition for Ward 4 to get some leaf removal, snow removal. I know my street was only plowed twice last year, and that was after the ice had formed and the potholes were there. So as the plowing went through, it didn't make much of a difference. So I am well aware of the limitations on the plow department. Thank you.
And then for Ward 3, we
Pretend
just pretend, I would say we definitely try and argue to go before Ward 4. But I mean, I truly, transportation, especially in a cold climate, really is almost a social justice issue. I work with the elderly. You cannot, if you're homebound, imagine being homebound with 4 feet of snow on the ground. People who don't own cars, people who have limited mobility. I really do think that these kind of fundamental things, and I guess I can take it back to the reason I'm even doing this. I had this realization that these fundamental things that don't seem to matter very much, or you can complain in a small way, such as potholes or snow removal, can affect certain people in ways that are unimaginable. I mean, to be homebound for multiple days because of the snow removal, it should show how much I would care and bring that issue to the fore were this an issue for Ward 3. But right now, is there a problem?
I may be misappropriating the source of this, but when the going get tough, the tough organize. I shovel the snow for neighbors on either side of my house, and they for me sometimes. And that doesn't take a whole lot, and it's just like, oh, I've got an extra 15 minutes this morning, I can do it. Imagine if you actually scheduled that out with your neighbors or with another civic organization that you work with or is active in the neighborhood. You could get a lot done, even in the summer, pruning or whatever. I'm sure there's probably some limitations on who can do that kind of work for the city, but organize, get the people involved. It doesn't necessarily have to come down to the city committing more money to an already overburdened street system.
So I think it kind of comes back to organization. So Mike Painter and Jane Kelly at the last Rose Park Neighborhood Council meeting, one of the great things that they handed out was a sheet of paper that was double-sided that had information, the contact information of all the really important departments that matter most to us citizens, the day-to-day services, including development services, as well as making sure that you know who to contact when you need someone to come by, plow the street, or take the leaves away as well. So part of it is just information. How do we get the information to the citizenry? Because if you don't know or you don't have a computer to be able to access that website, you're at a disadvantage. And so I think that's a really critical piece. And I know the city hired another person to actually plow our streets this next winter, so kudos to the existing council for doing that, and I think that should make a big difference. Thanks.
So Brian Hansel is our street department guy, and we just heard from him today. We did hire another person. There goes taxes. Anyway, you gotta realize stone plowing, you gotta get your main streets first. You gotta get Hagan, South Avenue, your collector streets, because there's where the traffic is. Sometimes you gotta turn around and do them again so you don't get the residential. Unfortunately, residential is about the last that's on the agenda. So you just really need to collect the streets done, or you won't even get to work.
Yeah, we're just giving $7 million to the mall developers. We paid $4 million for a pedestrian bridge. We paid $3 million for UKO compost. We gave $3 million to mercantile investors. And we gave another $3 million for, I believe, a town-done parking structure. And this is $20 million. And this is just the city misusing and misallocating funds. We're not even voting on any of these things, just city council deciding this. You tell me we can't buy more snowplows and hire more drivers with $20 million? The city continues to spend money on the want list while neglecting the needs list, and the citizens suffer. You know, we're all sick of the roads. I don't think we're gonna see any improvement because, again, the city keeps spending money on the wrong things.
The first thing I would do, if I was fortunate enough to get elected to the council, is I would consult with my other fellow Ward 4 candidate, Mr. John DeBari, and with Mr. Wilkins, and ask why Ward 4 was last for so many years, and I would ask them what some of those holdups were and ask for any workarounds to that. In addition, I talked to some folks that work at the cemetery, the city cemetery. The city cemetery has 7 full-time employees. And a private cemetery owned by Rick Evans, the Sunset Cemetery, has 2 full-time employees. And the 2 full-time employee cemetery buries twice as many people. So what you get, and I hear this from cemetery workers, is that they're sitting around the fireplaces sharpening lawnmower blades by hand because there's no grass to mow. And a lot of them have told me personally that we're qualified to plow snow. Why not put us to work? We'd feel like we were contributing more and we'd be able to help make the roads safer. Why not utilize some of that time and some of that experience that when they're not so busy in the winter time?
Okay, next question, I'll put it to you, Tom. What is your plan to increase transparency in local government, particularly with respect to the city government budgeting process? Shall I read it again?
No, that furrowed look at my brow is me thinking about this. And take that as I have an answer. So I have talked in questionnaires and also with possible constituents about transparency, and I think that a lot of times when the question of transparency is asked, it's also about understanding the ways that different city functions are put through, especially our budget. And I think that, and without sounding, the city does not need to be your teacher, and there's a way and a place for all of us to learn to understand what the city does and how they do it. And I am the first person to say, I don't know how they do everything, and I hope to learn. But also that I hope that everyone wants to learn. So when people ask for transparency in the budgeting process and whatnot, I see more a lack of understanding of that process and a feeling that the city doesn't want them to understand. And I do believe that the city does, and the city does a good job as is, that your input is just needed more in the budgetary process. So.
John.
What was I going to say?
Transparency.
Transparency, right. Where was I going to start? The need for community input. I had it all figured out in my head.
Let me read the
Thank you.
question.
Give me a second.
What is your
Let me follow my
plan?
brain again.
What is your plan to increase transparency in local government, particularly with respect to the city government budgeting process?
Okay, that's what I was going to start with. The budget is an indicator of what a government's or any body's priorities are. And those priorities ought to reflect the people who the budget is going to serve, or who's going to pay for the budget. So of course we have to have that input from citizens, the people, as well as the leaders. So again, that communication. How do committees get the word out about each component of the budget? They need to do a whole lot more with local media, other organizations, advocacy groups as well, to get the word out about how this is going to impact people in the community. Thank you.
All right, so this has actually been one of my really important points in my campaign, transparency in government. So I told you before I was a financial planner for 22 years. What I didn't tell you is I went to school to be an art teacher. And I moved to Missoula with that, so I pivoted. But that teaching experience that's what I want to bring to government. I think we all need to be gently reminded of what our taxes go towards. There's an expression, cost matters in the absence of value. Cost matters in the absence of value. And what that means is unless you know what your money is being spent on, you feel that it's a waste, right? And we won't always agree on what that money is going to go towards in terms of our taxes. But if we are informed, then we can find consensus. And I think that's the most important thing. Thank you.
So every Friday, it comes out what we're gonna work on Wednesday, budget of the hall. You know, every department comes in front of us and gives us what they want, what they're spending. I think we're very transparent. The biggest problem I see is when I look out at the audience, there's 3 people out there. So nobody says anything till the budget's passed, then everybody's screaming. So it's too late then. Come in and let us know as the process is going on. It's always on Wednesday, and that's the committee of, budget.
Yeah, I think what the question might also be referring to is that monumental screw-up where they misallocated or mismanaged $25 million or just didn't figure it out and it got left out of the budget and had to kind of go back in there. It's a big mistake. And then one of the things I think about in regards to this transparency is when you go into the city budget now, it's very frustrating because across 44 agencies or funds, we have $37 million in miscellaneous expenses, and we don't even know what these are. And I actually have dug into this a bit, so I called up the parking commission on one of these because they had $622,000 in miscellaneous expenses. And I asked the director, Rod Austin, I believe his name is, I said, what is this? He said, I don't know. And he said, well, I'll get back to you. Never got back to me. And you know, I understand why, because they don't want, where's this money going? We need to start listing this stuff so people can see it. I mean, if the downloadable budget that you can get on the website for your public view isn't even giving you the exact information of where your money's going, that's a huge problem. So thank you.
So, on September 12th, I was going through the resolutions on the city website with a gal that's been helping me out with my campaign, and I noticed something at the top right-hand side of the corner. It said, corrected, the budget, total appropriations are now $209 million. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't right. Because on July 24th, there were actually 20 people there that were testifying to the city to not pass this budget. It was only $185 million of total appropriations. So that was a $25 million clerical error that I brought up at the city council meeting, and Dale Bickle had to come up. He was not on the menu, not on the menu. He was not on the agenda that night. So he came, I must be getting hungry, but anyways, he came up, he was not on the agenda that night, and he gave an explanation which later had to be clarified and re-clarified by the papers. And actually, I was chastised by a member of the city council for me supposedly misleading the public by stating this. And I don't think so at all, because a lot of the city council people didn't even know about the error when I brought it to their attention before I delivered my speech. So, thank you.
As far as transparency in our budget, I personally would like to see the miscellaneous items line itemed a bit more, so those are available for the public to see and available to them. It would also, I think, help in regarding to John's comment about 3 people showing up for those budget meetings, if there was an online way for people in their own time to put in those questions toward the city council and be addressed, so that people don't have to come down on a Wednesday night. Thank you.
All right, so John, we're gonna have you start. Let's see. How would you address the urban deer problem?
Is my mom out there? All right, I know this has come up in the Moose Canyon Gully Neighborhood Council. My mom's part of the executive or leadership committee up there. And yeah, there's a lot of deer. There's deer everywhere. There's deer on 6th and 5th Streets in the center of town. That can be dangerous for morning motorists or cyclists or runners. The city has played with the idea of poison darting them to transport them. That hasn't really been effective. The idea of shooting them and making the meat available for the Missoula Food Bank or something, it seems like a viable option to me. I think the jury's still out on there. We can't really ask the deer to move out. A lot of people really like them as well. It is part of our urban wildlife. But I think it is something that we can't just let go unchecked because there is a clear danger to public safety.
Well, apparently, city council hasn't figured this one out yet. So I'm not going to be the first one to say that I know the answer because I don't. And so I think like any one of us, we have still more to learn and we have to consider all options. Thank you.
You know, it's gonna take longer than a minute to answer this question.
Yeah.
I worked with Fish and Game. I worked with Wildlife Biology Department. I worked with a Dr. Kirkpatrick out of Element. And we studied all kinds of ideas. Contraceptive, trapping, bow and arrow, but I don't want nobody shooting a bow and arrow in my neighborhood. A gun, I don't want nobody shooting a gun in my neighborhood. And then you got the people that say, leave my deer alone. That half of Missoula said that. The other half said, kill every damn one of them. So, you know, finally after about 4 months of trying to do something, I just went, gosh, that's enough. I'm not doing this anymore. So now, 2 years later, it's come up again, and we'll see if we get any better results.
Well, I think what we should do is probably follow Helena's example. I'm from Helena originally. My parents are still living there. My dad lives in McHugh Trailer Court where they have a lot of deer all over the place. And what Helena does is they do a annual survey or inventory of the deer that are living within the city, and they try to make sure that there's only a certain number of deer per square mile. I think it's maybe 21 or something like that. And then they go in there and they call those herds, you know, probably with a bow and arrow. And this is something Missoula needs to think about. I think we need to do this deer inventory. Helena just did theirs last week. And it's just a common sense thing. Deer, there's everywhere, all over the place in my yard, so.
So we've heard a lot of solutions tonight and a lot of studies. Very good.
I'm sorry.
So we've heard a lot of talk on different studies and different solutions to a problem that we don't really know how big the problem is yet. I think that if we're going to do any survey or study, we need to do a survey and see how many folks like the deer, how big of a problem the deer are, and then if that point presents itself that the deer are in fact a greater problem than they are, then we deal with the solution. I think that the city council often jumps ahead to these studies that cost money and studies that cost money and studies that cost money. And at the end of the day, it might be an issue that only a few folks have, or it might be a huge issue. But either way, they've done all this studying. They've put the cart before the horse. And I think that we need to change that. And I think that we need to take a good hard look at the deer population and the problems that it's having on neighbors, and then we can find the best solution based on the circumstances.
I see the deer as a public safety issue. My daughter ran out in the backyard last year and there was a big buck in it, and she was scared. That buck did not back down or run away. And as a community, are we going to wait till someone's kid gets hurt, or are we going to do something about this? So I support the culling of the herd. We get and take that meat and give it to the Poverillo Center or the homeless shelter or the food bank. And, you know, as a child, there were not deer. I grew up in the University District, and there were never deer on my street. And I attribute this as, I think it's partly because of dog leash laws, which we need to have. However, there's deer all over, and a lot of them don't look very healthy to me either. So these deer are not wild animals. They're born in my next door neighbor's yard, and they live their whole life within a few blocks of my house, the ones I'm familiar with.
So I would say this obviously seems like a fairly intractable problem, living in the urban-wild interface in the American West, or the East as well. I mean, like any wild animal on our city streets, we're lucky to have this problem because we live near prime deer habitat. And not only are our homes deer habitat, but the mountains around us are as well. So I would also have to say, while I support anything that would work in keeping them from being a public safety threat, I would be loath to introduce someone shooting any type of weapon, especially in Ward 3, where every house is about 10 yards from the other. So I guess I can just go on record for that one.
Our next question, and you'll be starting. How do you feel about the city council overturning of the Historic Preservation Commission decision to deny the demolition of the historic Missoula Mercantile?
Oh, easy one. I think this is probably one of the more contentious issues because it's always a fight between our tradition and those wonderful architectural elements that we have grown up with and looking forward to the future. And I think the council made a very hard decision, but I think it was one where they weighed the options over and over for months on end before they came to a decision. And I think that in and of itself shows great leadership. So John and other councilors who are here tonight, thank you for not making a knee-jerk reaction and to take your time making this decision because I know it was not easy. Thank you.
So it was a hard decision, and the historic board is an advisory board, so we should remember that. They're supposed to advise us, and they got kind of carried away. But I looked at it like, you know, this thing has been sitting empty for a number of years. People have looked at it. They couldn't figure out how to build it and make money on it. And so it was time to do something. And so now we're gonna have a Marriott hotel down there. And I think every businessman along Higgins will tell you, that's a good thing. It's gonna bring business to them, so. It was a hard decision, but I think we did the right thing.
Yeah, the Merc's gone now, we're building a hotel there. I think a lot of people were frustrated by that, a lot of people didn't care as well. I think it's probably just time to move on. I think John here makes a really good point, the fact that it sat vacant for years and nobody put forth any good ideas of how we could get some kind of viable going concern in that building. And so they just got rid of it, and that's what we're doing, it's time to move on.
So I'm not going to talk about whether I like the Merck idea, hate the Merck idea. What I don't like about the situation is the city council once again shutting down somebody else that has a differing point of view of them. They hired these guys on to be an advisory board for them, and the second that they didn't agree with them, they overturned their decision. They didn't try to work with them. They didn't try to come up with a compromise. It was their way or the highway. And that's something that I think we need to listen to all citizens and all folks. And we have these folks in place for a reason. The mayor appointed them for a reason to give advice. And if we're not going to listen to that advice, then what's the point of having it at all? So again, I'm not going to offer opinion on the Merc tonight because that was not in the question, but I just am concerned with the constant government overreach of the city, overreaching and shutting down folks with differing points of view than they have.
I have a degree in history and I'm a builder, and so I do have a passion for things of the past, and I believe looking back at our history helps tell us where we're going. And I also know as a builder that the mercantile structurally was not going to last very much longer. Those bricks in the 80s when it was sandblasted, the patina was blasted off those bricks, they were not stable. And so we had to make a decision. I think there was a lot of deliberation on it, and that was good. The council was listening. There was lots of people discussing this, but ultimately I think the decision was a smart one to revitalize that site.
I served as an alternate on the Historic Preservation Commission prior to this being an issue, so I can say I did not have a particular dog in this fight, but I really wanted to. There's a lot of ways you can go with this question, and I would say I'm going to be cut out for time before I get there, but I view fundamentally the problem being we wasted all this civic discourse, and we all got so excited and inflamed about this issue when there was a middle way. And it seems that there could have been a middle way to save the facade or properly tell the public why this building was going to collapse and it was unusable. And as a member of the public, I never felt that that was fully communicated to me. And I really wanted to see that building saved as part, I mean, I was on the Historic Preservation Commission. I'll put bricks in the street, like that's fun for me. But I fully understand if the building was not able to be saved. But my neighbors and I, we didn't know that. And that was, try as we might to save that building, I understand that it had to go. And I just see a systems problem where the Historic Preservation Commission, or council, or whatever, was not unable to enforce their will, and it'd be nice to see one with teeth that could actually tell the city what to do.
I kind of want to ask a follow-up on that one. What do those teeth look like?
Old.
Right, yeah, imagine. I miss the bond, the mercantile as well. Not necessarily because of what they had on sale or whatever for going back to school, but it's a beautiful little building. I work in the historic Labor Temple, just kind of a block over, and we're seeing a lot of development along Front Street and Main Street right now. Over the next few years, we're going to see a lot more, and that's part of the plan for millions of dollars of investment downtown. I'm excited about it, and I know that had a lot to do with the decision to go forward and say, this is the right decision, we need to knock it down. But there was conversation, and I would like to ask Tom later on what ideas he has about teeth, though, because I think that is important, that the institutions that we have in place to be a check on our government have the means to actually do what they're intended to do.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one question, and I think we will do a quick stand up and stretch break. So John, back to you. Please state your position on term limits.
I think term limits are not good because I think you need to know the history. And the people that have been there that you keep voting in, they must have some good aspect or you wouldn't vote them in. So having history is very important so you don't make the same mistake twice. And I think in state government, the same thing. We've lost a lot of that history. And it's kind of sad that has happened.
Yeah, I agree with term limits on some aspects, but I totally agree with what John was saying as well, especially when it comes to the Montana legislature and how we've lost a lot of this experience. We're getting a lot of these new people in there, and it seems like the situation is just getting worse and worse for many regular citizens. Here in Missoula, I don't think we really have a problem with people serving too long on the city council. Some people have served for many years, if not decades sometimes. But again, I think best term limit is probably the people just going out there and voting, and if enough of them are upset, you can vote the person out.
Well, fundamentally, I agree with what the two gentlemen just said. I must cite a poll done by Rasmussen that showed that almost 80% of Americans supported term limits in all forms of government. A mere 13% wanted no term limits. And I think that the point that's overlooked is the fact that as you're in office, you gain all kinds of wealth, you get all kinds of donors, you get all kinds of connections. You have a serious advantage over anybody else that tries to run against you, that's trying to run a grassroots campaign. You have a lot of big money behind you, a lot of big, powerful people that are able to get you in and pull strings, and I don't think that's the way the democracy was set up to work. So I think that that's why Congress passed term limits on the president, because they saw that, and I don't see why it should be any different for some of the members of Congress and as far down as the city council.
Our founding fathers did not imagine professional politicians in our government. The idea was you step away from your work or your livelihood and go and steer the ship of state, participate in the stewardship, and then go back to your day-to-day lives. And I feel that our nation, in some ways, has run amiss of that premise. And so I am for term limits. I feel that if we did have public voting, if we had larger numbers voting, this wouldn't be an issue. I think people would be turned over out of office much more readily. But we need to build up our voting base. Thank you.
I've always wrestled with this one. I don't know, term limits, they destroy institutional knowledge, and sometimes institutions, especially governmental ones, are really less a rule book than like a living body of knowledge. And sometimes those elder statesmen and women, even down to this, city council men and women, they have a place to bring that knowledge from the past to the fore, and they can teach new members. And then against that, though, it keeps the turnover and it keeps people from being able to fully participate in this democracy. Truthfully, I do not have an answer for that one. I think it's irreconcilable. So.
Remember that government shutdown in 2013? It's pretty spooky. A lot of critical government institutions were shut down for weeks. Remember how we got there. A bunch of new congressmen got elected into the U.S. Congress, we're talking here, who had no experience. Not only did they not know what the right thing was to do, they chose to do nothing. They were a know-nothing Congress. The result of that was government shutdown. So it is critical that we have institutional memory. Part of that means qualified candidates and government leaders are in leadership. It also requires that we do have transparent, inclusive elections. And I think Missoula County does a pretty good job of that, regardless of what some people in Helena might say.
I have to say this is one of my few regrets. We probably have many, but one of my regrets as a young person, I signed the petition for term limits. And I have kicked myself in the pants ever since. Because what I think those term limits have done is created divisiveness, especially at our state legislative level. And things our society is more polarized than it really has ever been. And I think that is a sad state of affairs when we are trying to do our very best to try and bring people together. And if at the governing level, if it's only seen as pulling apart, I think we've done ourselves an injustice. So to echo many of these things that all these fine people have said, there's that institutional knowledge that cannot be replaced. But that being said, we also have to find a venue that the next generation of heroes can step in and learn and not feel like they are completely at a loss.
Okay, stand up, stretch in place just for.
Any idea how many of these years again are just reproducing locally as opposed to people drifting in? No idea.
So I am going to smooth the couple together. Here's my first example of such. What is your opinion? Who's starting, Greg? What is your opinion of the proposed road diet on 5th and 6th Streets?
Yeah, I can see the concern there, especially if you're a biker, because it's so narrow on those roads and how you're riding. And yet, boy, I'm just really concerned about this. I don't know if it's the right approach right now. The city's heavily in debt, keep raising taxes. I'm not sure it's really high on the, should be really high on the priority list. For instance, that recent resurfacing we did of Russell Street should have been done about a year ago. And I think there's a lot of other areas in town we could be focusing on, for instance, just fixing our potholes. Last year, we only fixed 800 potholes in this town, according to Engen, and that cost us $330,000 to do that. The roads department is extremely frustrated because they feel as we should just be resurfacing a lot of these things because we can't just keep fixing them. And I feel as though we should just be taking more of these basic bread and butter issues and focusing on the most of the needs right now and not worry so much about starting a bunch of new projects. We got a bunch of new projects going on now.
I'm very concerned about the road diet issue because I know that the city seems to be trying to mirror more towards that of Portland, Oregon, and a lot of my clients that are business owners are very concerned about this trend because Portland, Oregon, if you guys have been there, pretty much all small businesses have been pushed out of the city center because of these bike-only lanes and these road diets because there's nowhere to park. And these businesses are really suffering. So you'll notice there's no small businesses within the city limits of Portland. And it's all taken over by the Starbucks of the world and taken over by the big businesses like McDonald's and stuff like that. But all the small shops, mom and pop shops, have been pushed out of the city limits. It's had a tremendous negative effect on their business. And I think that 5th and 6th Street, if we open this can of worms, I mean, we all know that the city council approves almost anything that comes across its desk. So if this was to come before the city council, I'd be very concerned that this would be passed and that businesses and citizens, automobile driving citizens, would be negatively affected.
Let's keep limiting our comments, please.
The 5th and 6th Street issue, I have driven those streets. I'm not seeing a lot of bike traffic on it. We have trail systems that are going through Missoula. I feel like with the Higgins issue as well, that I'm concerned riding up Higgins with my daughter with a bicycle, so we ride the next street over. So instead of taking arterials, perhaps we could take a street that's less utilized and use that for our bike trails.
I'd like to stand up for Portland, Oregon, but also say, numerous studies not funded by the city of Missoula, but national, have shown that road diets, which I find an unfortunate term, but making a city that is more multimodal friendly increases property values and has nothing to do with traffic congestion. And that is the study that I've seen and read multiple times, different ones throughout. I support this as someone who lives near this place. This is a residential street. We should not have people going so quickly through this residence. Now, if the question is, you like a question?
Could I hear the question?
Sorry.
Well, there's two, so I combine them. What is your opinion of the proposed road diet on 5th and 6th regarding the safety and traffic study?
Okay. You reminded me, if it's a safety issue, safety should be paramount. And not to mention the knock-on effects of the fact that slower roads, multimodal transportation supposedly also do not hurt our traffic problem, which is a whole other issue, but they also increase property values. And everyone, especially in this neighborhood, full of people who are owners and renters, want that to happen.
I live on 6th Street. It doesn't make me an expert, but it seems like a really simple solution. It doesn't sound like oh my God, we're going to be in debt for decades to come. It's a repainting of the lines. We can scuff it off and repaint it if it doesn't work. How about that? I think it's a simple solution that's been in the works for, what year is it? A long time. I'm surprised that it has taken this long. It is a safety issue. Living on 6th Street, I ride my bike into town, or I walk into town, or I drive into town. So I know what the traffic is like and what it's like driving down that street. People drive a little fast there, and we need to do something to slow them down. We can put more police on that street, but you're paying for more there. Paint it. It's easy. If it doesn't work, repaint it.
Safety is paramount. I understand that 5th and 6th are east-west corridors, but we also have 3rd Street that runs that same direction. I think what we have to remember is that we need to right-size our streets for the capacity that they are intended for. You may not be aware, but a two-way street can hold 40,000 cars a day. A single way or two lane going in the same direction can hold 40,000 cars in a day. And we don't have that kind of traffic to support that. So I think it makes more sense that we do right size so that we can actually have the multimodal forms of transportation, which does bring our property taxes at a really attractive place, and it's livable. That's the most important thing. Thank you.
Well, my first problem with that is that we paid for a study when we hired engineers, they could have done it themselves. So, I think $80,000 some were wasted there. If I was a bicycle rider, I think I would go parallel. I wouldn't go on those streets. We don't have very many east-west. South Side is not an east-west all the way to the university. There's problem with parking on that street. If you want to make it a nice safe street, you can do bulb outs. There's a way to mix all the traffic down. And I could say many more things about that, but I'm not in favor of making them one lane each way.
I think I started in that on that
I
one.
think you did.
I'll go again.
All right, changing topic a little bit, and you'll be starting, Jesse. The fairgrounds is in Ward 4. I have heard that County Commissioner has requested that the fairgrounds site be added to the MRA District Number 3. So MRA, city taxpayer funds, can be used to improve the fairgrounds. Do you support or oppose this request, and please explain?
I cannot state strongly enough how much I oppose this request. Urban renewal districts have been some of the most deceptive taxing instruments ever implemented by a city government. And the fairgrounds is county operated, for one, and for two, they're non-taxed entities. So we would literally be giving them money with no hope of getting any money back in return on an investment. So that makes absolutely no sense to me right now. Urban renewal districts have been able to funnel large amounts of money and become very deceiving, deceptive tools to take more money from the taxpayers. And yet another one that is on county property, that the fair is supposed to be maintained by the county. I think to drag the city into that through an urban renewal district especially, and adding to the fact that it is a non-taxable entity, meaning that we will not get any return on our investment for that, I think that there are other ways, private businesses that might be able to do a little bit better job of helping out the fairgrounds if the city looked for that. So,
Well, the fairgrounds, I would love to see the project go through. However, I am also worried about how that money will be raised. I was against the play field out by Fort Missoula. As a taxpayer, as a homeowner, I was, okay, well, I guess I have to pay for this. And I'm concerned that that would be what would be saddled onto my constituents as another cost, and especially because it's a Missoula County fairground. So I would need to learn more and hear more before making a final decision on that process.
I think renewal districts have their place. I could see this becoming a proxy war over that issue specifically, and if you keep it directed toward the fairgrounds themselves, I would say I have to oppose this as well. That is at first blush. I just think they have a mission creep ability to them sometimes that can do things to hurt our community more than they help in terms of our tax revenues. Having said that, though, the fairgrounds, it does still increase our quality of life and our taxes to bring people to our city, regardless of whether or not they sit on county land or the county fairgrounds. So they are a public amenity.
I went to Sentinel High School, which is right next to the fairgrounds there. So that neighborhood has always had, well, especially in the old days of Malfunction Junction when South Avenue went through, it's always had a real disconnected place in our community. So part of the Brook Street corridor development, one of the priorities is to make that area, make that entire corridor interconnected with all the neighborhoods around it. I think that's what the source of this request is coming from, and I don't really, I don't see the necessity for it. Part of this, I think, comes from the city and county planning, development services splitting. I think they could probably do a better job coordinating as separate entities than by just passing it all along to the city.
The idea of an urban renewal district is the concept of actually trying to attract businesses into that area. And there have been studies that show that if you have a URD in place, that businesses are actually attracted to moving within that particular district versus going someplace else. So if the council decides that this is a good place to have a URD because they want to bring a vitality and a sustainability to that particular neighborhood, I think that is a really good decision. The fact that that county is trying to work with the city is a monumental task. And in the past, those two entities have been at odds. So to see some cooperation and realizing that little pocket of county ground inside the city needs to be addressed and be fully participating so that we can have an increased tax base, which helps us all in the end, I think is a very good thing.
So I was on the Fairground Advisory Committee that we came out with a plan how to do more buildings and stuff. But when you talk about a URD, those are made to increase taxes. The fairgrounds will give us no taxes. And they're made to have development come in. You take where Cabela's is, there was a tremendous amount of money that increased there on taxes. Unfortunately, it was spent to build a bridge, but anyway, the fairgrounds isn't gonna do that, and so I am definitely against adding that to the Brook Street URD.
Well, we got Emily Bentley in charge of the fairgrounds right now. She's a former city council person, and we know how the city council just loves spending other people's money. Right now, the fairgrounds has a revenue problem. They're gonna ask you for more of your money to address that. I think the fairgrounds needs to do more things. We got the fairgrounds once a year, and the rest of the year, that thing sits there empty. Should do more concerts. County should be doing horse racing. Should utilize this more to create more revenue for itself if it wants to expand. Because guess what? That's what most households have to do. If you want to spend money, you gotta make money. And I just don't think we need to be asking taxpayers for more money for this URD. It's just a bad idea.
All right. Let's see. So there are a number of questions about taxes, property taxes and specifics, and I have 6 cards here. So I'm going to paraphrase them, if you don't mind. Let's see. Many of you want lower taxes. What would you cut? What would you cut in the budget? First, put you on the spot.
What would I cut in the budget?
Yeah, that's what people are asking. What would you do to reduce, if your platform is to reduce city taxes, what would you do to, what from the current budget do you see that you could cut?
Left field. I would say looking at the miscellaneous spending again and examining where are all that money being spent and trying to trim the waste would be a good place to start. Thank you.
I think that Missoula's stuck in between a rock and a hard place here because we don't have a sales tax, and I find sales tax regressive. And it depends upon what you think about that, but if we're going to stick with the sales tax, the property tax is the only way to raise money for our city, and then continually say yes to bond issues to fund things beyond what that would pay for, we need to look at our bonding situation. And that's up to the voters themselves and what's brought before them. I support and do not support different bonds, but as a city councilman, that would not matter because they're already happening anyway because you've decided. I do think that the taxation is a problem for affordable housing, which is an important part of my campaign. I think that being able to buy a house is important, but also not being priced out of it through taxation is also very important. Now, the city's been able to grow into their tax base right now and not have to increase taxes to do so. I would support first anything that brings more growth to our city. And then I'm not dodging the question of what to eliminate, but I think it's very important to see that we can invest more as well.
It's a good way to turn the question around. Yeah, more revenue, that's great. I'm gonna try to do some creative problem solving here as well. How about, I don't know, I think it's great that the city of Missoula is committed to a living wage for all employees. I'd love to see that spread all across the city and have that as the flagship for that. But I digress. Rather than cutting any full-time employees on staff, look for services that civic organizations, as I alluded to earlier, can do for the city at no cost as volunteer service to the community. Road repair to a degree, the groundskeeping, all those things, many of those things can be passed along to civic organizations who are as committed to this community as the city government is, if not more.
Cutting assumes that there's fat in the budget. And I'd say that there is very to little to none fat in the budget. So when we start talking about where do you save, a couple of percentage points, I know the mayor and all of his staff spent months trying to shave off 3, 4, 5% off of their budgets. There are certain things that they do not have control over, such as automatic pension increases. They have no control over that, whether it's their firefighters or regular county or city employees. There's just nowhere to move there. So that comes down to services. So I want you to tell me what services you're willing to give up, whether it's snow plowing or it's potholes filling or whatever else it might be. because I'm not willing to make that call right now until I hear from you. Thank you.
You know, as we grow, we're gonna add to the budget, because you automatically need more people, you need more machinery to do the job. Police and fire department is one of our largest. But you know what's really increasing the taxes? Fort Missoula out there that people voted for. The new library that people voted for. The school bonds that people voted for. I'm not saying, no, they're bad, but those are what your biggest increases are. It isn't the city budget, it's those other things that you vote that you want in there. And, you know, maybe we ought to curb ourselves on that a little bit. I'm worried about, I'm gonna fix it, because I'm also worried about, you know, taxing me out of my home. But I'll make enough of my home if I have to move to Libby.
Have fun.
I feel there's a lot of areas that we can take a look at. For instance, we've got $7 million for the mall developers, $4 million for the Reserve Street pedestrian bridge, $3.5 million to the mercantile investors, $3 million for downtown parking structure, $3 million to buy EKO compost, $1.6 million cost us for those new parking meters downtown. $1.6 million to reduce Higgins Avenue to 3 lanes, or at least, you know, that's what they want to do. $1.5 million to stop and bank a year after construction started. $1 million in April 2017 for the Mary Avenue improvements associated with the $7 million we already given to them all. $500,000 a year to a cemetery that's so poorly managed it has to crowd in on the private sector. $200,000 for a one-way street study this April. $122,000 a year for parking meter upkeep on the $1.6 million parking meters, which means in 10 years we will have paid for them twice. We got $50,000 to Berkshire Hathaway to improve their building, $50,000 to study Brook Street in April, $48,000 to hire someone to look at a parking gate downtown in May, $20,000 to study Higgins Avenue in April, $16,000 was paid to a California company for website work. We got another $172,000 for a stormwater drainage study. It's $27.5 million for all that.
So I mean, I don't know where to begin. So I do budgets for a living. And when somebody says that there's no fat to trim, there's always fat to trim. There's so many different things that the city can look at. They can look at zero-based budgeting, and all zero-based budgeting is you the budget for a certain department is based off of what that department spent the year before, and then they increase off of that. Who knows? Maybe this year they spent a lot of money on a school bus, or they had big expenses, and they don't have to do that next year. So instead of doing that, base the budget off of what you have, just start from the beginning, and that will help eliminate waste. You will be able to go year to year. It takes time, it takes resources, but it ultimately does improve a cost savings amount. And one last thing I want to say. We have total appropriations of $209 million right now. That is the largest budget that we have ever had by tens of millions of dollars, and we still have to raise taxes. We still are looking for tax increases. I think we have a spending problem. We do not have a revenue problem.
Next question. Thomas, will be for you. What will you do to improve availability of affordable housing?
Like I said in my previous question, I really do think that the affordable housing question is really a symptom of the city's success in attracting people and money to this city. It's increased the property values, and it's increased the amount of people here without available housing stock. I just would like to say that you will have to look at this type of thing holistically. And it's not just what I'm about to say, which would be making sure that people can stay in their home is equally as important as letting people buy into a home in the first place. And I do believe that housing itself should be a right for humans in the United States. We have to have roofs over our heads. And if we're going to be a community that treats everyone equally and with respect, that is the first thing we have to start with. Having said that, we can go through, I support definitely increasing the per square foot taxes put on new large construction in Reserve Street. This is a way to move money that would be spent otherwise here anyway if Walmart wants to build another store, move that to pay for their workers who they do not pay enough to afford to live in this city in the first place. And I could go on, I'm sorry, I don't have any time.
Let's see. Private development of new apartments, there's a component, we can continue to require that they provide affordable housing options as well within any of those developments. We can streamline the process. I know Mr. Wilkins will not appreciate this, but the process of giving the okay to ADUs in town is one option. Although I think now City Council spends a lot of time on oversight of that specifically. And using zoning options, rezoning commercial for mixed commercial, single home residential to multi-home residential, all those are options that planners have that with proper oversight of City Council can be very useful in making sure that we have housing options for all incomes. I'm looking for a house, so this is really important to me.
Affordable housing is an important issue, and it comes along with making sure we have a living wage as well in Missoula. And I think this dialogue is going to go on for a long period of time. But the fact is we have about 5 to 7 years before our time runs out to make sure that we can actually keep a cap on affordable housing costs. And so we have to act quickly. Erin Pehan, who's the director of housing now, she and her staff have been undergoing a joint effort with a couple of different partners in terms of trying to find some possible tools that would encourage positive and good development. And part of it requires for us to be open to ideas that maybe we are a little hesitant or a little inclined not to agree with. But if we want to make this place affordable for as many people as possible, we're going to have to look at ADUs. We're going to have to look at higher densities. And we're going to have to be willing to be better neighbors.
So affordable housing, you know, Missoula's struggled with it for the 12 years I've been on council. I think the only way you're gonna get affordable housing right now is you subsidize it. That means the taxpayers are gonna put the part of the bill. And that's what subsidizing is. I think over the years that I've seen Missoula try to make smaller lots and do infill, they just keep pricing the cost of land. And the cost of land, of course, ups the price of the house. You can't expect a developer to build a house and not make a profit on it. So either you subsidize it or you try to increase wages. And I think that's one important thing that we should do. And a little subsidizing probably wouldn't hurt too.
Yeah, we have a big problem with housing in Missoula. The average housing price right now is, I believe, $270,000, and 10 years ago, it was about half of that. And I started looking into the numbers, and it's just astounding because in 2007, we had 303 single-family homes being constructed, and then last year, we only had 195. So we're actually constructing fewer single-family homes than we were a decade ago, before the recession even hit. And then in 2007, we had 153 multifamily homes under construction. Last year, we had 150. So we were just about the same area on multifamily homes that we had 10 years ago, so we're just not building. So the demand is going up, supply isn't moving, and like John here said, probably the only way you're gonna get affordable housing is by subsidizing it. If I just rattle off a list of $27 million of things we don't really need, so maybe we could direct some of that money to that. It's again, taking a fine-tooth comb to that budget, figuring out what our priorities are, where the money's going, what we can be doing with it.
So, government subsidies only work if you're impoverished enough to qualify for one. So it doesn't actually decrease the value of the homes overall, because let's just say you have somebody that's paying $200 a month and the government's paying the extra $600 a month. That house is still renting for $800 a month on the open market. It doesn't do anything to drive down the cost of homes. So another thing that you have to look at is over the past 12 years, what has gone up and up and up along with properties and unaffordability. And that's been taxes and impact fees. And I'm glad that John brought up higher wages. And you could have higher wages if the taxes were lower. If businesses had to pay less in taxes, they could pay their employees more. Impact fees, if you had to pay lower impact fees to build a home, then somebody could purchase a home more cheaply. If you had lower property taxes, then you could also rent a home a lot more cheaply, because ultimately the renter does eat the cost of that. The construction worker and the landlord does not. So ultimately, the renter is as affected by high property taxes as we are.
Affordable housing is one of my paramount issues in Missoula. I think that we as a community succeed when we have a diverse economic group living here. As at city council, the real only power we have is potentially zoning. We should look at public-private partnerships and potentially developing tiny houses and affordable pathway to dignity sort of solutions for people of lower incomes. We don't need to be building 300 square or 3,000 square foot housing. We should look at smaller ways of doing that so people can at least get into a home, may it be small, but give them a stepping stone to getting to a larger home. So, thank you.
Well, it's about 7:41, depending on how you want to synchronize your watch, and we still have a number of questions, but I don't think we have an opportunity to get to them. They're very good questions. The ones that you responded to were very good questions. I'm sure that's kind of a challenge to be put on the spot like that because each question was so different. So I think you did a really good job thinking on your feet. So again, I apologize that we weren't able to get to all your questions. But now what I'd like to do is for you folks to take 2 minutes. You each get 2 minutes, not 1 minute, 2 minutes to do your closing statement. Before people leave, though, thank you very much for coming tonight. It's really helpful to see people take an interest in the community and to see who our elected officials could be. And so thank you very much for that. So where were we? Would you like to start?
Sure. All right. Again, thank you everybody for coming down. I'm also happy to see sitting council members here tonight to see who you will be working with. There will be 2 of us up here joining you next year. I don't, speaking for Ward 3 candidates only, and I apologize if I'm off on this, but I don't think there's a huge disparity in the values among the 3 of us. I think we, all 3 of us represent the values and the concerns that people in Ward 3 are voicing. The difference is how we prioritize them, how we go about the governing of it. Making sure that people know what their government is doing and know how to reach their representative, how to reach their mayor, how to reach their city council member, how to reach their neighborhood council, or how to talk to somebody in the police department or development services. What meeting is meeting next week that is regarding leaf removal or urban deer? And what are the priorities that the mayor is putting out? What do I need to know? Those are the issues. That is the issue that is most important to me. Making sure that the communication between the people of our community and the government of our community are actually in touch with each other. I know how to do that, and I look forward to serving my community in that capacity. Thank you again for coming.
Several weeks ago, my husband and I took our daughter, Thea, over to MSU for her freshman year. And it was kind of at this point when I was starting to think about what my platform would be, and I had this easy to remember acronym, ACT. Affordable housing, climate change, and transparency in government. But we listened to a speaker, their keynote speaker for their convocation, whose name is Brian Stevenson, bestseller author, an attorney out of Alabama, whose life's work has been defending people on death row as young as the age of 9. And it was in that moment that I realized that I have to not only act, but I have to act up. And that up part is to be an advocate for the unprotected. Every one of us in this room falls into the protected class. We are lucky to be here in Missoula. We're lucky to have a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. And yet there's a whole bunch of people that are homeless and their children are homeless and living in cars, or they don't have health insurance because they can't stay mentally stable. So there's a lot that I want to do, not only for all of you in this room, but there's many, many more who are not represented here tonight. And so I have a lot to do. I have a lot to do, in the next 4 years. And I hope that I can count on you as my neighbors to help me help others. Thank you.
I'm gonna get up this one.
Good job, John.
So, you know, I hear a lot about taxes, we're paying way too much in taxes, and some of that I agree with. But let me tell you what we accomplished in the last few years. We hired 2 more police officers for downtown. You don't see the things that we were seeing before downtown. There's still a little bit of a problem, but a lot of the problems been taken care of. We had 2 security type people that are patrolling the trails. We were having a lot of problems on the trails. So that's helped. This year, I actually got asked some money for the budget to put a full-time worker on suicide prevention. And that part of that is also serving the military. So, and that's really dear to my heart because I'm a combat veteran from Vietnam myself. And I've known a lot of vets that have taken their own lives, unfortunately. I actually had 2 people on my block last year do that. So it's very important to me, suicide prevention. So I work hard for Ward 4. I always have, and I always will. And I hope you re-elect me to another 4-year term, and I'll do the best job I can do. And if I don't, please tell me. And I appreciate all of you coming tonight. And I still got 30 seconds. What more can I say? Thank you a lot.
Once again, my name is Greg Strandberg. I'm running in Ward 4 as well. And I've come here tonight and I've rattled off a lot of different numbers. And the reason for that is because I came prepared. I know this stuff. I've dug into the budget before. I've called the agencies. I figured out where a lot of this money's going. And I don't agree with it. I don't think it's really benefiting most taxpayers in the city here, that the taxes have gone up so much. I don't think it's benefiting a lot of renters who might be seeing their rent going up. And I just feel the city is in the wrong direction right now, and we could have a little bit better talk about where the money's going and try to figure out a way that we might actually be able to start reducing taxes. Man, wouldn't it be great to have a headline that says Missoula's will be reducing taxes by 1 or 2% next year? I think we could actually do that if we just start really looking at the budget. And that's why I'm running, and I hope you vote for me. Thanks.
I'm Jesse Ramos, and I'm running because I'm a numbers guy. Like I've reiterated over and over again, I love looking at the budget. I love studying the numbers. And I think that as a private citizen, I was just looking into the numbers and brought up a $25 million clerical error to the city council. And that is something that I would continue to do and continue to advocate for, is more transparency, more council people just digging into stuff, spending a lot of time analyzing things and understanding everything before they vote on it. Also, I would like to just see a bunch of different things addressed as far as the efficiency of the budgeting program. And because of my career, I often study under some of the brightest economists and wealth managers of our time. I fly all over the country, and my company pays that. The taxpayers do not have to pay for that. And I think that I could really bring a wealth of knowledge to the mayor, whoever the mayor turns out to be, and to the city council. I think I could be a valuable asset for them to tap into and say, I don't quite understand this bonding issue, Jesse. What's this mean? How long are we going to be locked into it? And I can take a look at them, and I think I can offer them some good guidance. And I'm also running for a change because I do believe in term limits. And I think that if somebody's on too long, they're just concerned about getting reelected. And I think that some folks have lost the point of view of the citizens, and especially the point of view of the taxpayer. And I want to come to bring a fresh voice to the citizens of Missoula and put some of my knowledge to work for the city. Thank you.
I'm Chris Badgley, running for Ward 4, if you didn't know already. And I'm running on a platform of accountability, responsibility, and transparency. I feel these are important issues that affects all of us. I love Missoula, always have. It's a special place. This is a world-class city. I've been a number of places around the world, and what we have here is special, and we have to take care of it. And that involves stewardship and tending the garden of our garden city. I look forward to being one of those tenders. I'm not going to promise you things that I can't deliver, but I will make decisions based on information, in facts and listening to the people of Missoula, and especially Ward 4. I would thank you for your vote. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for coming in.
So I'm the last one, Tom Winter, Ward 3 again. You will soon be out of here. I am running, I said why I'm running previously, but really, in general, I see Missoula approaching an inflection point, and I think all of us do here, and that's why we're running. The city's growing, something is about to change. The next 5 to 10 years are going to be pivotal for the way the city will be for the next 50 to 100. And I love Bozeman, and nothing wrong with it. I go there for the weekend, if I can afford it, because Bozeman is an incredibly expensive place to live that has a bifurcated society of extremely wealthy people and the people that serve them. And the last thing I want to see Missoula turn into is exactly that. The city council has to harness the issues of the forces of growth that are buffeting this city to work for a city that can work for everyone else. And we cannot become another Bozeman or another Jackson. We cannot become a resort city, because that is not a place with a real civic discourse or real civic values. And while I applaud those places for the wealth they've generated, I really think Missoula can still get that same wealth and that same level of development without betraying the people among us that have less. And that's why I'm running, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Can we applaud our moderator?
Sorry?
Can we applaud our moderator?
So I need to ask, as this is a public meeting, if there's any public comment on non-agenda items and announcements? All right, thank you. So on behalf of the Community Dispute Resolution Center and the neighborhood councils, we thank you very much for attending tonight's forum. Thank you, candidates, for participation. And let's not forget to vote.
That's right. Thank you.
Candidates, that's the question.
I think our candidate is a great candidate.